The topic, Kevin King. The thesis, how good is he as a number 2 corner? Could he potentially be a number 1 corner? And how do you attack him and how do you beat him? Let's just get into it. So with the Packers having Jaire Alexander, Kevin King has been that number 2 guy for a couple years now. And I think that he's actually pretty good. I think that one thing he does a great job at is even when he gets beat, he can still win. And what I mean by that is a play like this, where it's going to be, he has a one-on-one matchup. It's man coverage. He's going up against Alshon Jeffrey, so he's the cornerback closest to the sideline on the top of the screen. It's a slant route, which is, a difficult route to defend against man coverage, especially when the number 2 receiver, he's just running quick to the outside, so he's staying out of the play. So you also have another defensive back in the area who you could run into. A lot of problems can happen here for Green Bay. And perhaps this biggest problem is going to be how well Jeffrey runs his route. Right when the ball is snapped, he does a great job of staying to the outside in a way that gets King to think that this is going to be a play somewhere, deep or potentially just to the outside like that. You see King, his hips are turned towards the sideline, really well ran by Jeffrey. So now all he has to do is give King a little slap on the back, and he now gets wide open towards the middle of the field. There is just so much separation right here. Against 99 out of 100 corners, this is a completion at this point. However, King is that 100th corner, and watch how he's able to come back and knock the ball away. It could have been a little bit better of a throw from Wentz. He kind of had a bit too much air under it, but that's a nitpick. I mean, really good play by King there, I think, and that's what King does so well. It's his ball skills that are so impressive. That's how he had 5 interceptions last year, and this was one of them. It's going to be in that Minnesota game. It's a one-on-one matchup. Diggs is running a route that's going to get towards the sideline on the bottom of the screen in the end zone. Actually, to backtrack a second, when this play happened, people highly criticized Kirk Cousins for making this throw. But watch why he makes this throw. Because after the ball is snapped, look at how open Diggs is going to get. I mean, Diggs cuts over the middle. He has more speed than King, and he is able to get open. And look, he's even waving at Cousins, throw me the ball, I'm open. So he wants the ball right here. So you could blame Cousins if you want for this throw, but at the same time, Diggs is literally calling for it. And while Cousins is going to have to make this throw completely off balance, which isn't going to allow him to get as much zip on it, also look at how much room King is able to make up right here, and he went from being a couple of steps back to being able to make the play. King is the kind of guy who can get beat. I'm not going to deny that. But when you can get beat and still find a way to come back, that's just great because, having those ball skills, it just makes it that much more difficult as a receiver because you have to get that much more open against King. One other thing I really like about King is he's not afraid to take his eyes off the quarterback and just focus on a receiver if he has to. This is a good example where they're in the snow. He's going up one-on-one against the New York receiver who is running a curl route deeper down the field. So King is going to be having to move backwards at a certain point during this route. And watch what he does. Right when the ball is snapped, he's totally okay with just facing the receiver. He turns his head, he's looking at the receiver, which is what you have to do in man coverage. But also, typically, this is a bad thing, right? Because you can't really get your head turned around and try to make a play on the ball. It's much more difficult. But again, King is so good at making a play where he sees that the New York receiver has stopped right here. So he's saying, okay, if he's stopping right here, that probably means I should turn my head around because the ball could be coming in this direction. And that's going to be exactly what he's able to do, and he gets the interception. Just a really difficult play to pull off. A lot of guys can't pull off a play like that. King can. He has those, again, I keep saying ball skills, but that's what really what makes him an effective player for Green Bay. It's that. It's his ability to be a football player and make plays. If you watched my Jaire Alexander video, I talked about one of the things that he's so good at is, recognizing their screens, attacking a screen if you can. But you can't also just run a screen away from him because King is also very good at those types of things. Like on this play, it's going to be a screen pass. They're going to try to have, it's going to be an offensive lineman run over and block King, and then just have a receiver take a couple steps back and he gets the play. But again, watch how King, he steps a couple steps back, but then once he realizes what's going on, he runs right away and is able to make a very quick tackle. I think he's a pretty good tackler as well, and it's really difficult to run those kind of wide receiver screens against Green Bay because they have two corners, one on each side, that make it very difficult to do that. So I've answered some of the questions. Is he a good number 2 corner? No, he's not. He's a great number 2 corner. He's really good at that number 2 role. I think the number 2 role is perfect for him. The other 2 questions I raised at the beginning of this video were, could he be a number 1 corner? And also, how do you beat him? I don't think would be a great number 1 corner, and the reason for that is because of how you can beat him. I think he could be an okay 1 corner, but he's much more well-suited as the number 2 guy. And the reason why is for plays like this. King is going up one-on-one against Sterling Shepard right there on the bottom of the screen. Shepard is running a route deep, trying to get into the end zone. Seems like it's nothing too fancy on paper. But what's going to be interesting here is how Shepard runs this route. Where watch how he kind of fakes as though he's going a little bit to the outside, cuts a little bit in. So at this point, King kind of just naturally thinks this is going to be like a slant route or something shallower, which would make some sense. From King's perspective, this could even potentially be a running play. Again, King very quickly will take his eyes off the middle of the field and just focus on the receiver for a good reason. But, there is some ways that can backfire. Right now, King doesn't know exactly what's happening, and he certainly is not prepared for a deep route. Showing Shepard does run deep, King isn't naturally athletic enough to keep up with Shepard, and Shepard is able to make the play. The reality is, I think the biggest problem with King is his footwork, and that does get him into a little bit of trouble here and there. Not much. He tends to play pretty well, but I do think that it will get him into trouble here and there. And I think that really, like a play like that, I know people are going to say, well, it was a snowy game. You can't hold that against him. And no, if that was the only time I saw him make that mistake, I wouldn't be bringing it up. But he does this relatively frequently where he will get beat on moves like that. And coincidentally enough, that's the same way to beat Jaire Alexander. And I think sometimes you see why certain teams are able to play well against Green Bay. Usually, the way you play well against Green Bay is just having good route running receivers that can beat Alexander and King, because that's really the way to beat them. I think there's no doubt about it. When you look at, San Francisco is another great example. When San Francisco had good route runners and they, really just outsmarted Green Bay in a lot of ways, they outsmarted them badly and they got guys wide open. And that's kind of the problem with King and with Alexander. But that being said, I think King is actually really good, and I think that, again, as long as he can just maybe improve that footwork a little bit, just enough so that he can take advantage of those ball skills, I think that's what really he has to do to become that number 1 corner, so that way Green Bay could have 2 number 1 corners, as opposed to right now I feel like they have a clear 1 and a clear 2 guy. But hey, that's just my opinion. What do you guys think about King? Do you think that he is a number 1 guy? Do you think that he's not a number 2 guy? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.